to set up the live stream. Okay, just want to make sure that's working. Possibly not. Maybe I did the live stream wrong. Let me try that again. Sorry about that. This is my first time setting up the live stream myself, so.
Yeah, no worries.
Let's try that again. Okay, I think that is about to work. So I'm gonna go live. I think I just forgot to hit one button there.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so I will go back to my presentation and let's start there. Okay, perfect. I think we're good. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to the Best of 2020 Young Adult Book Chat. Just a couple housekeeping items before we really get going. There is closed captioning available. It should come on automatically, but if you prefer, you can also turn it on or off at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. As I said, the program is being live streamed on Facebook, so you're welcome to turn off your camera. And we will have a chance for a discussion part of the program later. And when that happens, you're welcome to either unmute your microphone or you can just participate through the chat if you prefer, and I'll just read your comments aloud. And if you want to comment on the Facebook live stream, I'll also try to keep track of those comments too. All right, I'd also like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which Brampton Library is located is the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and before them, the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Huron, and Wendat. We also acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and other global Indigenous people that now call Brampton their home. We are honored to live, work, and enjoy this land. All right, before we get to the main event, I'm just going to very quickly mention a few updates on Brampton Library services. So curbside pickup is available 3 days a week at 5 of our 8 branches. So that's, you can see here, Cyril Clark, Four Meadows, Mount Pleasant Village, South Fletchers, and Southwest. For most of those branches, it's Mondays and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Wednesdays from 2 to 8. The only exception there is Southwest, which is only available in the afternoons at this time. The other 3 branches, Chinguacousy, Four Corners, and Springdale, are now open 6 days a week with limited services. So you can use the computers, you can print and photocopy, and you can pick up your holds. Do remember, though, if you're coming to pick up books and DVDs from any of the branches, please make sure you request them ahead of time on the library's website and wait until you receive a notification that they're waiting for you before you come pick them up. The other big news we have is that we have launched the Brampton Library mobile app, and it is now available in the Google Play and Apple App Stores. You can use the app to quickly access your virtual library card, search the library collection, keep track of your due dates, renew your borrowed items, place holds, manage all of that stuff on your account. You get to benefit from some built-in features, including scanning ISBNs and self-checkout. And there's also our event calendar is integrated into there. So you can see all about our upcoming programs, events, digital resources, lots more. So if you want more information about the app, you can go to our website, and we also have a video virtual tour of the app available through our site or on our YouTube page. We also have some great upcoming virtual programs, including this one, which might be of interest. So this coming Thursday in 2 nights, I'll be hosting a virtual board game meetup, which is just a chance to have some fun playing online board games with other youth. Please keep an eye on Brampton Library's online calendar through our website and on our Eventbrite page for upcoming programs in the new year. All right, let's get to it. So today we're going to be talking about some of the best young adult fiction of 2020. So whether you're here to get recommendations for your to-be read list, gift ideas, or you just want to chat with other book lovers, we're welcome. We're so happy to have you. And to start, I'm going to briefly go through some of the most popular YA titles from Brampton Library this year. So the physical books and the ebooks that were the most checked out, and those that were most logged in our Teen Summer Reading Club in the summer. And then I'm going to talk about some more critics' picks for the best of the year, as well as some of Brampton Library staff's favorites. So I have a lot of books on this list. We'll see if I get through all of them. But yeah, and then we've got some time as well towards the end for some chatting. So if you want to share some of your favorite reads of the year, we'd be so excited to talk about those. All right, so let's go. The top 10 physical books that were borrowed from Brampton Library this year. These are just the YA titles, so not the overall collection. We've limited it to just to YA. And we know this year has obviously been different. There were a few months when borrowing physical books wasn't available. Plus, customers haven't been able to browse the stacks, which I know a lot of people miss, to pick up their own books for the majority of the year, really. But that's what makes this list kind of interesting. I found it really fascinating. So we've got number 10, The Outsiders by Essie Hinton. This book was originally published in 1967, but it's still such a perennial favorite for so many readers. I think part of the charm of it is that Hinton was only 15 herself when she wrote the book, which gives it such a great, authentic voice when it comes to reflecting the lives and concerns of the teen characters. Number 9 is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This book was first published in 2017 and was super highly anticipated that year when it was John Green's first book after the massive success of The Fault in Our Stars. In this one, the main character, Aza, has OCD and works with her best friend to try and find a missing local billionaire. It's a book about friendship, about mental illness, about grief, and Green writes with just such great empathy and accuracy towards his characters. Number 8 is The Winnowing by Vicky Van Sickle. This one also first came out in 2017. It was also on the 2018 Red Maple list for the Forest of Reading. Great for fans of The Hunger Games and Divergent. The Winnowing is a tale of a dystopian future where teens go through a mysterious medical procedure called the winnowing, and which no one who's experienced it remembers. The main character, Marievik, is separated from her best friend and winds up investigating this world of conspiracy and rebellion in her quest to get him back. Number 7 is Sadie by Courtney Summers. This was published in 2018. Sadie tells the story of a 19-year-old trying to hunt down the person who murdered her little sister, as well as a podcast that's following the clues that Sadie is leaving in her wake. It's super propulsive, it's haunting, it's definitely one a lot of customers can't put down. Number 6 is King's Cage by Victoria Aveyard. This is number 3 in the 4-book Red Queen fantasy adventure series. The world is split between the red commoners and the silver elites who rule over them. And Mare Barrow is a red, so she's a poor girl. She's working as a servant in the Silver Palace, but she discovers that she has a power that gives her the ability to lead a rebellion. I've heard that some people were really disappointed in the second book in the series, but this one, the third, received pretty positive fan reviews. So obviously, it held up. I know I saw a lot of reviews for this book series come through in Teen Summer Reading Club as well this summer, so it's obviously really popular. Number 5 was A Reaper at the Gates by Sabah Tahir. This is another third entry in a fantasy adventure series. So this is from the best-selling Ember in the Ashes series. It's full of plot twists, secret reveals. These books really are page-turners for sure. The first book in the series has already been put on Time Magazine's list of the 100 best fantasy books of all time. The world is kind of inspired by ancient Rome, but it's got fantasy elements as well. So Leah is a poor girl who trains to become a spy in order to try and help rescue her brother when he has been accused of treason. Each book adds new characters, fantastical elements. It's a really, really fun series. Number 4 is In the Key of Niragani. This is a really great contemporary coming-of-age story. It came out just last year in 2019. The main character, Niragani, dreams of being a musician, but she clashes with her Guyanese family who are kind of pushing her to become a doctor or a scientist. So it's a book about navigating family, friendship, finding your place in the world. A really wonderful contemporary fiction story. Number 3 is The Light Between Worlds by Laura E. Weymouth. This is a standalone novel released in 2018, and it kind of walks the line between fantasy and realistic fiction. It follows these two sisters, Evelyn and Philippa Hapwell, who escaped London during the Blitz in World War II to a magical kingdom called the Woodlands, where they lived for years. But they return to London, and no time seems to have passed at all there. Evelyn becomes super desperate to return to the Woodlands, but Philippa is trying to find a way to move on. So it's these two sisters reacting differently. It's got fantasy elements, it's got historical fiction elements. It's kind of a blend of everything that's great about YA fiction. Number 2 is A Grain of Rice by Nung N. Tran Davies. This is loosely based on the author's childhood. It's a book that follows 13-year-old Yen and her family in Vietnam. After they survive the war, the family's village is devastated by a flood, and they decide to leave their home country and immigrate. And it's kind of a really suspenseful story. It gives the reader a great insight into the not so distant history of Vietnamese immigrants. And our number 1 most borrowed physical book from Brampton Library in the YA category was Stowaway by Pam Withers. This one came out originally in 2018. It was also on the Red Maple list this year in 2020. This story follows Owen, who is a 16-year-old who decides to sneak onto a yacht in the harbor near his home to have a little adventure. And once the boat is out at sea, Owen realized he got a lot more than he bargained for, because this is actually a boat involved in a human smuggling operation. It's not innocent fun, and he and all the other people on board are in really serious danger. So it's a suspenseful, fast-paced, standalone novel. It's really intense, but really, really fun as well. Okay. So next, I'm going to be talking about some of the YA ebooks that were the most popular this year. So these are the top 10 ebooks that were borrowed through our Cloud Library app. If you haven't tried Cloud Library, I really recommend it. You have access to thousands of great ebooks and audiobooks. You can use the app on your phone, a tablet, or on your computer. The top few books definitely had higher circulation than our top print books. But actually, once you get past the top 3, the numbers line up pretty closely, which is really interesting to me because ebooks were obviously much more highly available for people throughout the whole year. So let's get to the top 10 list. At number 10, we have The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This one, this is a great, great contemporary novel. It first came out in 2017 and it's been really popular ever since, basically. It follows Star Carter, a teenage girl who witnesses a friend being shot and killed by a police officer. It was, I think, particularly relevant this year as many people became more aware of police violence against Black people in the wake of George Floyd's death by police in May of this year. So I think some people who maybe hadn't read it yet and were meaning to got around to reading The Hate You Give, or maybe it came onto more people's radar. I loved this book. It's I really highly recommend it. And you can see from the cover it got lots and lots of awards as well. I'm kind of going to jump around in this because we have some multiple titles in the same series, just so you know. So we're going to jump to number 8 here. We have Turtles All the Way Down. I just talked about that in the print checkouts list, so we know this title. At number 9 and number 7, we have Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. So these are kind of middle books, books number 5 and number 6 in a 7-book series, kind of an 8-book series because there's a prequel that was published in the middle. Anyway, it gets a little confusing, but the Throne of Glass series. So this is a really epic fantasy saga following the journey of Selena Sardothian. She's a teenage assassin in a corrupt kingdom with a tyrannical ruler. They're super fun, super popular, really, really great books. Okay, number 5 is Allegiant by Veronica Roth. This was the final novel in the Divergent series, originally published in 2013, actually. It follows Triss in a dystopian future where all citizens are strictly divided into factions to suppress their individuality and their free will. Those who are not sorted into a faction are treated as an underclass of society. So this is book, what did I say? This is book 4, I believe. It's the final book in the series. I know that they did make a movie series of this series of books, but I believe that the final movie ended up just not being made. So maybe that's why this last book is so popular. People want to see what happened. All right, number 6, 4, and 3. These are all from the Court of Thorn and Roses series. So we have A Court of Wings and Ruin, A Court of Mist and Fury, and A Court of Frost and Starlight. And you may have noticed that Sarah J. Maas now actually has a whopping 5 titles on our top 10 ebooks list. This series is also fantasy, but it takes place in a fairyland as opposed to kind of a dystopia. So it's more like a high fantasy, I guess. So if you prefer a little less violence, a little more magic, this is probably the one for you. Then our number 2 book is The Upside of Falling by Alex Light. This is actually the only book that was published in 2020 on either of these top 10 lists. It's a contemporary high school romance, kind of like well, it's such a common romance trope. So it starts as like a fake dating situation, turns into real love. Alex Light started writing on Wattpad as a teenager, and this is her first published novel. So this is pretty cool, pretty exciting, really young, exciting new author to keep an eye on in the future. And our number 1 most borrowed ebook from Brampton Library this year was The Marrow Thieves by Sherry Dimlin. You can see from the cover of this one as well, it is a multiple award nominee, including being named as One Book, One Brampton in 2018. So this was the book we recommended everyone in Brampton read. that year. The novel takes place in a near future dystopia where indigenous people in North America are being hunted for their bone marrow to heal the loss of an ability to dream. It is a super gripping book. It touches on a lot of real life issues as well, though, things like loss of cultural identity and prejudice against indigenous people. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. I loved it. It's super thrilling, super fun. Really makes you think as well, though. Okay. So then at the end of our teen summer reading club, which took place from June to end of August or till September, I suppose, this year, these were our top 5 most logged books. So overall, Teen Summer Reading Club participants logged a total of 2,167 books this summer, which was amazing. But these were the most commonly or most popular logged books. So number 1 was The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. So we talked a little bit about his follow-up, Turtles All the Way Down, already, and that one was read by a whopping 16 participants. Then we had Indian Horse by Richard Wagamese, which was read by 10 participants. Then we also have The Hunger Games and Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins, and To All the Boys I've Loved Before, which were all 3 read by 9 participants total. All right, and then these are the BL staff favorites from the year. No particular order to the listing here, but I did kind of a call out for Brampton Library staff, and these were the biggest titles we had. These are all books that did come out in 2020, books that our library staff read and just absolutely loved. So I'll give you a synopsis of these ones. Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. This is a novel in verse about 2 girls. One is in the Dominican Republic and one is in New York City. Their father dies in a plane crash, and they have to deal with their grief and find a way to keep going. And eventually, they also learn of one another's existence because they didn't know before that they shared a father. So this is just a really beautiful contemporary story. Unbelievably great writing. Elizabeth Acevedo has written a couple of other books, The Poet X and With the Fire on High, that were wonderful as well. And our librarian also suggested trying the audiobook version of this, which is read by the author herself and is just a really wonderful, wonderful version, a wonderful way to experience it. All right, the next title there is You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. This is a contemporary high school story about a girl named Liz who has always had a hard time fitting into her super white, rich, prom-obsessed high school. She just feels like she's too black, too poor, just wants to get out of there, basically. And her big plan is to go to Pennington College, but it hits a snag when her financial aid plan falls through. But at her school, the prom queen title comes with a scholarship. So she develops a new plan that she's going to make sure that she becomes prom queen this year in order to get that scholarship. Then we have Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. This is another contemporary novel, but it's got some supernatural elements to it as well. Yadriel wants to prove himself and get his traditional Latinx family to accept true gender. And as part of the plan, he summons a ghost. But instead of the ghost of his murdered cousin who he was trying to summon, it is the ghost of his school's former resident bad boy. And now that he's here, they need to work together to find out what happened to him and solve his unfinished business. But also about so much more than that. And it's just a really, really wonderful book. Then we have The Ballad of Songbirds and if you didn't know, this is a new Hunger Games prequel novel by Suzanne Collins. It follows the future President Snow, who is really the big bad villain of the original Hunger Games trilogy. So back in the 10th Hunger Games, he was a mentor for a competitor from District 12. And the book it's a little bit different. It's a more reflective, thought-provoking read than like the nonstop action of the original trilogy, but it's still going to keep you turning the pages until the very end. Then we have Felix Ever After by Cason Callender. This is another contemporary realistic novel. In this one, Felix longs to be in love, but he fears that he has too many marginalized identities. He's Black, he's queer, he's trans, and he fears that that's going to kind of stop him from being able to find someone who will love him. But when he also starts receiving transphobic messages from an anonymous fellow student. And so Felix begins a journey questioning what he's doing, where he's going, what his identity is. But he really is able to go through some self-discovery that helps him redefine his most important relationship, which is not going to be with a person he falls in love with, but it's going to be with himself. It's just a really wonderful, loving book. Great characters, really, really beautiful. And then the last one on the list is Mad, Bad, and Dangerous to Know. This is by Samira Ahmed. It tells a dual story about Khayyam, a 17-year-old girl in modern-day Paris, and Layla, who is a favored woman in a harem 200 years earlier. And the intersections and discoveries about the lives of these smart, capable, marginalized young women will really grab you and keep you reading to the end. So it's a great mixture of contemporary novel and historical fiction, which is like totally my jam. Yeah, it's really, really wonderful. Okay. Let's just see if there's any comments on Facebook. Yeah, it's somebody just said it's interesting that the most popular books read in the summer are older titles. I was surprised by that too. A lot of them are quite a bit older, but I think it also gives us a great look at the staying power. I think sometimes we think of YA as well, it's tricky because some people call it a genre. It's not really a genre. There are many genres encompassed within YA, but it has more staying power than people think. I think a lot of people think of it as being faddish, but there's so many great books that really will stick with you and will have a lasting power for many years as well. Okay, so let's get into some of the biggest books and best books published in 2020. So these are ones that have been recognized by sort of top lists or maybe have been shortlisted for awards. Of course, it's only the beginning of December, so all those best of the year lists are only starting to come out. But I think we've highlighted some really great books that we hope might be of interest if you haven't heard of them yet. These were all published this year in 2020 and could potentially either make great gifts for the holidays or just lots of great books to add to your TBR pile. I know I have added a lot when I was pulling this list together. Okay, the first one on the list is Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism and You by Jason Reynolds and Ibram X. Kendi. So this is a reimagining of Dr. Ibram X. Kendi's National Book Award winning Stamped from the Beginning. That is just a general nonfiction book, and this has been adapted for younger readers with award-winning YA and middle grade author Jason Reynolds, who is also the young people's laureate of the USA right now, I believe. Something, I can't remember the exact title. It is a nonfiction interrogation of racial inequality it focuses obviously in the USA, but it's clear to all of us, I think, that racial justice is not just an issue in the USA or for the USA. And I think that by learning more about the history of race there, we're also better equipped to confront the issues here in Canada as well. So although it is definitely very US focused, I really still recommend this book. It's so interesting. It's a great reckoning with history and with the way that systems and governments have bought into and perpetuated racism through the years. The next book is We Are Not Free by Tracy Chi. This novel is a finalist, or was a finalist on the National Book Awards list in the US. It is historical fiction. It's the story of 14 very tight-knit group of second-generation Japanese American teens. They're living in San Francisco when everything changes after Pearl Harbor and the US declares war on Japan in 1941. So at that time, Japanese Americans were rounded up into internment camps, forced to leave their homes, their possessions, their regular lives. And this novel follows the group of teenagers as they really have to just learn how to adapt and pull together in the face of so much injustice and racism in that internment camp. If you like historical fiction, I think this is a really great one to check out. It's not a story that, I know in Canadian fiction we have Obasan by Joy Kagawa, which also talks about Japanese internment. But beyond that, honestly, I can't think of that many examples of fiction for young people that is focused specifically on this issue. And it happened both in the US and in Canada. So it's a really great, interesting story. Okay. The next title is Apple, Skin to the Core by Eric Gansworth. This was also a finalist on the National Book Award list. And this book, it uses a really fairly unique style of memoir in verse. So a poetic style, but not fiction. It's a memoir. And it's sharing Eric Gansworth's story as well as the story of his Onondaga family and kind of the larger story of the treatment of Indigenous people in America by settlers. When the author's family and nation the author's family and the nation they're from are now in the USA, I think there's a lot of overlap in the type of racism and treatment that they face as there is in Canada for First Nations people. It's beautifully written. It's a really powerful story. Definitely worth checking out. The next title on our list is Punching the Air by Zoboi and Yusuf Salaam. This one's also told as a story in verse, although this one is fiction. It's a collaboration between Zoboi, who is the author of many books, including American Street, Pride, My Life as an Ice Cream Sandwich, and Yusuf Salaam, who is one of the exonerated 5. So this book tells the story of Amal, who is wrongfully incarcerated as a teen. And so it draws a lot on Yusuf Salaam's own experiences, but it also creates a unique and beautiful character in Amal. This is a really great book for lovers of poetry and language, but also just those interested in complex contemporary stories. Okay, then we have, going in kind of a different direction, The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the first book in a new series, and in this list I came across quite a few sequels or new books in a series, and I didn't include them in the list because for those who love this series, they're definitely going to buy the second book, so or borrow it from the library, but I'd love to focus on some new titles that you might not have heard of. So The Inheritance Games is Jennifer Lynn Barnes is the author of the Naturals series, which you may have read, but this is a new one. And it's kind of like a high-stakes mystery thriller, a little bit twisty and puzzly. So the main character, Avery, has left the entire fortune of billionaire Tobias Hawthorne when he dies. But she actually has no idea why and doesn't even know who he is. So to retrieve or receive the inheritance, she has to move into his puzzle-filled mansion and make sense of all these riddles and codes he left behind. There's secret passages, all kinds of weird, twisty, turny, strange things happening. And she also, on top of all that, has to deal with his not too happy about her family. So this is a really great one for people who grew up on maybe 39 Clues and love a good twisty mystery. I think it's going to be a really fun series going forward. Then we have A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This is another first book in a new series, another really engrossing mystery. The premise reminds me a lot of Sadie by Courtney Summers. And I believe it was originally published in the UK, but has been kind of slightly adapted to make it more Americanized. But it's just a totally engrossing mystery thriller. If you were into the first season of the podcast Serial, then you definitely have to check out this book. So it's about this girl, Pippa. She is in her final year of high school working on a project about a murder that took place in her small town 5 years before. But even though someone has been found guilty and is serving time, as she's investigating, Pippa begins to find that something isn't really quite adding up here, and the killer might do anything to stop her from finding out the truth. So it's definitely more of a thriller, I think, than the Inheritance games, a little bit darker, but definitely a really great, intriguing mystery as well. All right, then we've got The Gravity of Us. This is a contemporary YA romance about Cal, who is a social media journalist. His father works for NASA, and he's been selected for a mission. The father has been selected for a mission to Mars. He meets Leon, who is another kid of an astronaut, and the two start to kind of fall for each other. They have a lot in common, but then complications arise. So there's some secret mission information comes to light, and Cal has to figure out how he can do what's right without hurting the people he loves. All right, the next title is Tweet Cute by Emma Lord. This is another contemporary romance. It's got some highly social media savvy teens, so it kind of has that in common with The Gravity of Us. In this novel, so the main characters are Pepper, who is running the social media for her family's successful fast food chain, and then Jack, who is an annoying class clown. He works in his family's deli. He's a thorn in her side, and he ends up launching a Twitter war when Pepper's family steals his grandmother's signature grilled cheese recipe. So they're duking it out via tweets, but at the same time, they don't realize that they've also been chatting through an anonymous chat app, and they've been falling for each other. It's super fun, super funny. Read it with some fries handy. There's lots of great food. It's really, really a little romantic gem. Okay, then we've got The Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. This is the first in a new trilogy by the author of the hugely popular Mortal Instruments series. It is part of this kind of world. It's a new series, but it's part of an overall world that Cassandra Clare has already published books in. It's kind of like a spin-off, I guess. So it's like historical fantasy, sort of, about Cordelia Carstairs is the main character. She's a shadow hunter battling demons in London. And then this new breed of demons begins to attack, and they can't be defeated like the others she's fought before. So they're able to move around in daylight. They're able to do lots of things that other demons couldn't do. And so the whole city ends up going into a quarantine, like a lockdown, which is kind of may or may not make people want to read it more this year. So while this is happening, Cordelia and her friends need to uncover new powers within themselves in order to save everyone in the city. All right, then we have Legend Born by Tracy Dion. So if you like your fantasy worlds a little bit closer to home, this contemporary fantasy might be a better choice. 16-year-old Bree is trying to move on from after her mother is killed in a really strange accident. But then she's moved on, is trying to move on. She's at a new college, and she witnesses a magical attack and then discovers that there's a secret society of legend-born students trying to hunt down demons. And then she's kind of like unlocking this mystery, and then also is able to unlock some magic in herself. So literal black girl magic. This is a really exciting new series. Kind of can't wait to see more of it. It's going to be really good. All right, then we have Cinderella is Dead by Kaylin Bayron. So this is a really cool premise. It's set 200 years after Cinderella found her prince at the ball, and teen girls are being forced to appear at an annual ball each year for men of the kingdom to select their brides, kind of like in the name of Cinderella. But knowing she's much more interested in her childhood friend Aaron than any of these gross dudes of the kingdom, Sophia runs away rather than going through the ritual. But when she does, she meets the last known descendant of Cinderella, who's named Constance, and together they work on developing a plan to bring down the king for good. So this one, I haven't read it yet, but it sounds awesome. Kind of got that like fantasy fairy tale element to it, but still super awesome, like girl empowerment, bringing down the patriarchy. It sounds pretty awesome. Okay, then we have Fable by Adrienne Young. This is another new series, first in the series. So the main character is named Fable. She lost her mother a few years ago, and then right afterwards, her father abandoned her so that he could go travel the seas. He's like a powerful trader. And he leaves her on this legendary island that's just like full of thieves. There's not a lot of food that they're all fighting over. And Fable manages to survive 4 years of this, and then decides to enlist a young trader and take to the sea herself in order to find her father. If you're interested in like pirates and kind of like sea adventure, spunky heroines, this is definitely one to add to your list. Okay, then we've got our last two books that I'm going to talk about. These are both Canadian authors, so getting a little CanCon in there. The next one is Charming as a Verb by Ben Philippi. This is the author of The Field Guide to the North American Teenager, which was a really great book that came out just a few years ago. He's back. So this is another contemporary novel. It takes place in New York City. And Henri is the son of a Haitian immigrant. He has the ability to charm just about everybody he meets, with one exception, his classmate Corinne. So she doesn't seem to be buying it. And when she discovers that he isn't being as honest about this dog walking hustle he has going with his rich neighbors, she kind of blackmails him into helping her with her schoolwork. But eventually they find that working together is changing the way they work and helping them be more honest about their true selves. So super lovely, charming, contemporary YA, really nice, fun, good read. And the last title I'm going to mention is You Were Never Here by Kathleen Peacock. So this is a a book about Kat. It's a real thriller. So Kat returns to her hometown after 5 years away. But when she does come back, she discovers that her former best friend, Riley, has disappeared. And Riley's brother asks Kat to help him figure out what happens. Meanwhile, another girl is found floating in the river. So Kat decides she has to help, and she can use some of her unusual abilities to do it. So it's a thriller. It's got a touch of the paranormal. So when you've finished Sadie and A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, definitely check this one out as well. Okay, so I can leave the floor open for a few minutes. If you have any books that you've read this year, in whether or not they're YA, and you'd like to share them, we would love to hear what your favorite reads of the year are. You can put that into the chat. I'll keep an eye on the Facebook comments as well. See if anybody has anything to add there. Okay, well, if nobody feels like sharing, that's all right too. You're welcome to leave. If you see this later, feel free through the Facebook, like if you rewatch the Facebook Live event, please feel welcome to leave some of your favorite reads of the year in the comments. And I'll try to make sure I check that out tomorrow and see if there's some more good tips there. The other thing is, if you'd like a list of all the books that we mentioned here today, you can email me, Rachel Hopwood. So my email address is rhopwood at bramptonlibrary.ca. Let me actually add that to this slide. And then, yeah, we would love to hear some of the books that you've enjoyed reading as well. Okay, so that's not coming. The email address I will also put in the comments in the Facebook live stream and in the comment section here. So thank you so much for joining us, for your interest in the books. If you're interested in trying any of those books, if you want to add them to your list, make sure you search them up on the Brampton Library website. If you can't find it, you can always put through a request for purchase. So these books are really new, so we'll probably be able to get our hands on them. Or worst case scenario, we can always do an interlibrary loan for you and you can pick it up at the Brampton Library. So thank you so much for joining me. It's been wonderful to talk about books. I know that I've added a bunch to my to be read list, and I hope you have too. So please don't forget to check out the Brampton Library app. Check out our Eventbrite page for more upcoming programs, and hopefully we will see you at the library again soon. Thanks so much for joining me.